Hello and welcome to your sixth online lesson on William II. This is also the final lesson that will cover the reign of William Rufus. If you want to get down some notes today, there's no worksheet to go alongside this lesson because it is going to be quite short. So what you need to do is you need to make sure that you've got just a page of notes ready to take as we're talking through this. It's a relatively short topic, and there isn't necessarily a specific 20 marker that goes alongside this question for William Rufus's reign, and instead what we'll do is we'll carry this on when we look at Henry I from next week. So your title today is How did Henry Beauclerc manage to become King Henry I in 1100? And we'll try and think about how the balance of power shifted in favour of Henry, or more towards Henry, we should say, by 1100. We'll try and think about why Henry might have felt confident to act by 1100, and then the main focus of what you need to do prior to Thursday is to try and start forming some judgments on the reign of William II, ready for an online test that you'll be doing on Thursday. Now, we've been returning to this particular checklist as we've been going alongside, just to show where we're at with this particular course. So we've done a lot of the Normandy component. We've gone back and completed William II's relationship with Scotland. We've looked at Anselm's conflict with William II. We've looked partially at the Norman kings and the papacy. We'll have to continue that with Henry I. And really, once we do this particular activity today, which is about Robert's decision to go on Crusade, then we have finished William II as an overall topic. Now, just to start with, for this particular lesson, we're going to actually go to the very final topic. So the first thing that you'll need to get notes on will be the event in question of the 2nd of August 1100. And this is a momentous day in English history. It's something which is commemorated and being written about quite a lot, and you'll be able to find out a lot about this online. But the short story is that on the 2nd of August 1100, William Rufus dies. He dies in the New Forest, which was a hunting ground that William the Conqueror had set up. But what we aren't completely sure about is about the circumstances that surround his death. We know this much. We know that William is out hunting with a party, and we're fairly confident that a man by the name of Sir Walter Tyrrell shot an arrow towards a deer, and it hit William Rufus, killing him. This could be an assassination. It could be the case that Walter Tyrrell was specifically targeting William and wanted to kill him. There's evidence that links Walter Tyrrell to Henry Beauclerc, but it's not the question that the exam board want you to focus on. It's not a question that we really need to be concentrating on too much, because the evidence is one that we can't really come to a definitive judgment either way. We're not too sure whether he did mean to kill William or that he didn't, and it's not really the question that we need to ask. What we do need to find out is why Henry Beauclerc was able to become king in 1100, and this is just one of the factors behind it. Perhaps the more important question that we'll be looking at next week will be, how was Henry I able to hold on to power? And this really is part of that chronology that links into this. So, as I say, just to summarise, on the 2nd of August 1100, William Rufus is killed, either intentionally or unintentionally, in the New Forest by a gentleman called Sir Walter Tyrrell. What happens after is that Henry quickly moves and crowns himself King Henry I. But what we do need to think is, well, why are we only talking about Henry and William in 1100? We're not talking about the eldest son of William the Conqueror, the elder brother of Henry and of William Rufus, Robert Curthose, or Robert of Normandy. So what we need to find out is what's happened to Robert of Normandy from when we last left him around 1095 to 1100. And really the turning point is this, that in November of 1095, Pope Urban II is at Clermont in France, and he delivers a sermon which has absolutely... The significance of this particular sermon is far-reaching, just beyond the forthcoming years. It's actually had an impact even to today. He calls for something that's never been called before, which is a crusade to the holy city of Jerusalem. And what he's calling for is that he wants Jerusalem to be in the hands of the Christians. And he calls for different leaders across Europe to put down their arms against one another and to fight against a common unified goal, which is the Muslim and Jewish people that were in the Holy City at this time. The vast majority of attention, however, is focused towards Islam. And what he's done is he's called for the First Crusade. Now, in your next unit that you'll be looking at, hopefully if we return back to school after this particular half term, but certainly also into next year, will be on the Crusades, and we'll look at the motivations behind Urban II creating this call for arms. But in this particular context, what we need to understand is, what does this do for our crucial figures of William, Robert and Henry? So in 1096, after a bit of deliberating, Robert of Normandy makes the decision that he's going to take up Urban II's call to arms, and he's going to travel to the Holy Lands alongside an army to take Jerusalem back into the hands of Christianity. It's interesting to see why Robert does this, and again we can say that there's going to be a number of complex reasons behind this. You can say that this is down to personal piety. By doing this, he would absolve himself from any sin. He would obviously curry favour with the Pope, and actually it's perhaps going to save his own soul for when he does pass into the next life. You could also perhaps say that this was about the spirit of adventure. They were going on a long quest. It was going to parts of the world that Robert had never been before, and we know how warrior-like the Norman family are, and that would have obviously appealed to Robert as well. It could also be the case that he wanted to perhaps get out of his father's shadow. William the Conqueror had obviously invaded England, was a very notable warrior. Robert hasn't had that same level of success, and he's not conquered anything specifically. So this again might put him on that same pedestal and take him out of his father's shadow. What is interesting, though, is that he doesn't necessarily have the money to afford to do this. The Pope hasn't given everybody a set of money and said, okay, this is going to be your allowance for going on the crusade. Robert needs to raise these funds himself. And what he does is he uses his newfound improved relationship with his brother William to get some funds to go onto this particular expedition. William therefore agrees to lend Robert £6,666, and in return what William would do is he would look after Normandy as a pledge for the repayment. So if Robert returned and gave him his money back, then Normandy would be returned to Robert. So this is quite a serious decision. What this also means is that William is now in control of England and Normandy. And you might think that that means that he's now a complete ruler, an absolute ruler, and by getting rid of Robert, he's lost his main rival. That isn't necessarily the full case, because he's tried to get money for Robert, and because he's supporting this particular expedition, this quest, this crusade to the Holy Lands, he's had to raise taxation to quite high levels, and that hasn't been popular with a number of the senior barons. At the same time as well, he gives back the counties of Bayeux and Coutances to his other brother Henry Beauclerc, who's starting to get more and more influential. We know Henry's been doing this before, back in the late 1080s and early 1090s, and there is still that friction between Henry and his brother William. Over the next few years, Robert of Normandy has gone over to the Holy Lands. He's travelled there. It's obviously going to take a long time, and we'll talk about his successes when we look at the Crusade topic. But he doesn't return to England and to Normandy by 1100, so it's only left with Henry and with William. William is relatively successful during this period. He's suppressed the Welsh, he's suppressed the Scots, and by 1099 he's also restored Norman domination around Normandy. He's defeated a number of people from the territory of Maine. Because Robert has gone to the Holy Lands as well, it means that William and Robert now have this sense of attachment, and things do change by the 15th of July 1099, because Robert is going to return to England. It's going to be a long journey. It's going to be something that's going to take a while, but he successfully, along with other notable European families, conquered the Holy Lands. Now, this is where we have this unusual event take place as Robert is returning from the Holy Lands. William is relatively powerful, but perhaps not necessarily popular. And that's where we have that momentous day of the 2nd of August 1100 when William Rufus is shot and is killed. Now we'll look at Henry Beauclerc's motivations after that particular event, and we'll try and look at how he was able to consolidate power and what problems he had with Robert of Normandy. But in this short video today, I want you to start thinking about this particular question, and it's something that I want your judgments on Thursday. So the question that could perhaps come up as a 20 marker might be along these sorts of lines. It might be along the lines of William II was an effective King of England. How far do you agree? And what I'll be doing as part of this activity on Thursday is I'll be trying to get you to form your judgment and share your judgment so that we can start plotting that as a class. So on Thursday then, you're going to be doing an online quiz which will be on the reign of William II, and you'll be submitting a few judgments as well, so what you're thinking. I'd like you to prepare for this as a test, so I don't want you to have resources in front of you when you complete this online quiz and you submit your judgments. I would therefore like you before Thursday, obviously to go back through not just this lesson, but the previous lessons on William II and start just memorising some of those crucial facts, crucial parts of his reign from 1087 to 1100. And it would be useful as well for you to start forming a judgment about whether or not you think he was an effective or a good king. I don't really want to use that word good. I'd much prefer to start thinking about what makes a king effective. So was he able to make the country safe, secure? Was he able to deal with any threats? Was he able to work closely with the church? Was he somebody that sorted out issues for society as a whole? Was he a patron? So was he somebody that supported other people? Those are the kind of things that I'd like you to be thinking about as well. It's a much shorter lesson today, so thank you very much for listening. And on Thursday there won't be an online video. It will be an online quiz with some submission of judgments, and this time next week we'll be moving on to Henry I. Thanks very much.